Munson Cemetery Prairie. We're going to take a walk through. As you can see, the prairie does have a mown path. So for those who cannot or choose not to walk through the prairie, you can walk these mown grass paths and still see some really great stuff. So the first one I'm going to take a look at here now is we're going to look at this bush. That is kind of a knee-high height bush. This is New Jersey tea. It's a ceanothus and beautiful. This is one of my favorite plants. And as you can see, we've got some spent seed heads in here from last year. We've got this year's blooms. And they're pretty compact little shrub. Would probably do really well in a native prairie garden. Back behind here, let's see if I can reach out and grab these leaves. But you look here, this is rigid goldenrod, and it's getting ready to bloom. We'll keep walking here. Let's see what else we can find. See out here, another good stand of the New Jersey tea. This plant with these very dissected leaves, that is yellow-headed coneflower. It's just starting to bud up, will be blooming soon. As you can see, this prairie is full of that New Jersey tea. Look at that. Excellent. Somebody has come and put notes letting you know what the plant is. Now these here, these tall plants, these are sunflowers. And I know at this particular location, I think they have both sawtooth and giant sunflowers. For me, just looking at them like this, I won't be able to ID if it's one or the other. Usually I like to have the flowers and I take a look at the bracts, the green bracts or the sepals that are in the back of the flower. Help you identify it. The bird you hear singing in the background, that is a dickcissel. It's a grassland species. It is a declining species. It's a species of great conservation need in many of the Midwest states. So we're happy to hear him. We're glad he's here. I'll tell you right now, I did not learn to say the Latin names correctly. I kind of self-taught myself. So forgive me if I butcher some of the pronunciations here. Here we've got one of the anemones. And it's either thimbleweed or it's the other anemone. I'd have to look it up. Maybe I can put it in my captions. I can let you guys know exactly which one it is. Here's one that's starting to bloom. So it's not as fancy. I don't think it's the thimbleweed. It's the other one. And we've got an interesting little grass down here. A cool season grass. You guys can see this. It's one of the dicantheliums. Used to be panicum. I'm not sure if it's Scribner's or one of the other type. I can get you that far. Then usually what I do is I take a bunch of pictures and I go home and I start going through keys and ID characteristics to figure out which one I'm dealing with. I know just enough to get me that far. Here with this silver gray plant, it's getting ready to bloom. That's lead plant. It's a morpha. We also have some native sedges out here. A lot of prairie restorations, we neglect the importance of those sedges in the plant community. So figure out what the appropriate sedges are for the location that you're restoring prairie, and get those in there, because that's a really important, what's called a functional group or functional guild. And the more plants you're missing in the essential functional guilds, the less successful your restoration is going to be. Now we're going to see in a little bit here, they are blooming, but these are last year's blooms of coneflower. And I'm not sure if in this particular prairie, if it's the pale purple coneflower or the other one. There's another one. You tell the difference between the two based on the pollen, if the pollen's yellow or not. So when we see flowering plants, we'll take a look at it, see if we can see that differentiation, how you would tell the difference between the two. I'm going to walk through the prairie a little bit here, because we're kind of walking into the sun, and I'm going to walk back towards the path so you can see a few things. But I've got a yellow plant from the sunflower family down here that I want to come down and check out. Alright, yeah, so we've got a Black-ged Susan. That's a real common plant. Usually you see those in restorations as well. They do really well the first year to 3 years after being seeded, or the first year, 2 years, after you do a management, maybe a prairie burn or something of that sort. And then it kind of starts to fade back into the landscape. But it's important, it's serving a purpose, because after you do a burn and the site is somewhat bare, it's a good thing. But you don't want invasive early successional plants kicking in and filling that role right after management. So you got to make sure you've got native prairie plants that fill that functional niche, that early plant that's going to respond to a disturbance and germinate quickly. And then as the more dominant species kick in, it kind of fades into the background. So, there's a give and take, there's a balance, and whatever you do, you got to try to include as many of those functional types of plants, the functional groups of plants as possible. And the more redundancy you have more than just one species of a functional group type. So legumes, legumes is one functional type of plant. Just don't have one, have several. Here, these highly dissected leaves, right here, that's the compass plant, that's one of the silphiums. See, there's a pretty good stand right here. And down here we have some, let's see if I can get down here. This is pretty cool. I wish I'd been here earlier. There are the seed heads for the shooting stars. Those seed heads right there. This finely leafed plant is, I'm looking at it, it looks to me like it's a dahlia. It's the, oh, wait a minute. No, I'm wrong. This is mountain mint. It's a slender mountain mint. It's got the thinner leaves. There's the Virginia mountain mint. It has more robust leaves, but smells wonderful. That's mountain mint there. Here we go. Here's the coneflower blooming. So, and I don't see any yellow pollen, so that's most likely pallida, which is pale purple coneflower. What I'm going to do, I'm going to turn this direction. We're going to look from this side of the path. The side that we were just on is a little bit weedier. It's on a slope that goes down, and it's right next to the crop field, so there's some edge effects likely going on there. That's why you want to make your prairie stands as large as you can, because the the bigger it is, the more species diversity it'll be able to hold and maintain. So here we go again. We've got a nice, beautiful stand of pale purple coneflowers. And here are the Black-ged Susans again. Just bouncing around in the wind. And as you can see, if you just stay on the path and look in, you're only seeing the most notable stuff. But if you notice I'm stepping in, all of a sudden you're seeing all sorts of plants that are kind of hidden from view. That's why I always say, you really can't see prairie unless you get in it. If you just look at it, you're going to miss a lot. So here, those purple spires, that's the lead plant. And behind it, see here, you get these leaves that are, let me see if I can get down closer. And I have to be careful because this is not macro. But these leaves with all these little leaflets, that's prairie cinquefoil. Potentilla, I think it's arguta if I'm correct. And you see these grasses, the heads here, that's porcupine grass. Here we have a compass plant that's putting up its flower. So he's all set to go. They're set to go. Let's see what else we have going on over here. Now the reason why so many of our prairies are in cemeteries is because much of the rest of the landscape has been altered, changed, cropland. But one of the few places that did not get touched very often were in these cemeteries. So when you guys wonder why this lady spends so much time in cemeteries, it's because that's where the native remnants are. Majority of them. Okay, so this little guy here that's budding out, that's going to be purple prairie clover, dahlia. I'm scanning for other things to show you. Here are those sedges again. They're not a grass. They're actually sedges, but a lot of people mistake them for grass. Now I'm sure at some point here we're going to run into some plants that are not native. And that happens quite a bit in remnant prairies, cemeteries especially, because at one point in time maybe someone planted peonies or the orange daylilies and Shasta daisies, those types of things usually pop up in these cemeteries because at one point somebody did plant them. A plant they probably didn't introduce, but it came on its own, is red clover. Red clover is a legume. It's a non-native, and it can become invasive in prairies. So the other pale purple coneflowers again. Lots and lots of compass plant, as you can see. Let's wait, let the wind settle down just a bit. This plant with the white flowers, it's another invasive species. Unfortunately, it's white sweetclover. It's a biennial, but highly invasive, so you gotta get in and try to get that under control as fast as you can. Our pale purple coneflowers again. Plant popping up again. Here, this plant here grab it because the wind's really moving it. This plant here. That's one of the goldenrods. And in the goldenrods, you can look at the leaves. And again, I don't have macro capabilities on here. I don't know how well you may or may not be able to see these leaves. You can see there are three main veins. Alright, if you look at the stems, these stems are kind of fuzzy hairy, so that might be Canada goldenrod. Again, this is one of those I'd take a little piece back with me and ID just to make sure, but Canada is fairly common, so it wouldn't be a surprise if that's what it was. These are those tall asters again. Like I said, either sawtooths, or not asters, sunflowers. Sawtooth or the giant. Here's some more of those invasive clovers. And this site especially looks different. Each season of the year, almost every time you come out, it's just going to look different. It's so full of different plants. So here we have a milkweed, and that's most likely just common milkweed. Now, for those interested in visiting this site, it's a very easy walk. It's not very difficult. So, if you have mobility issues, you're a little bit worried, this is one site that you could come to and easily traverse it. Here you can see there's a really nice stand of the pale purple coneflower out here. In this particular area, you see the straw-colored heads of the sedge out there as well. It's a pretty good stand of them here. Let me see if I can get them. It's going to be a little tough to see them because of the wind. I do see another plant out here. I want to step in just enough to show you what I'm looking at here. And reach out and grab it. This plant here, and you see it's stretching out to bloom, but this is the flowering spurge, native flowering spurge. There are some asters in here. I'm going to try to visit the site again later in the year. I usually don't attempt to ID out the asters if I don't have to, you know, when they're this young. If it's a site that I can come back to, I'll come through and ID the asters and add them later. See, it's white underneath. A lot of the native thistles, the undersides of the leaves are white or silvery, and sometimes that can help you identify the natives versus non-natives. That's as in-depth as I can go on that right now. Just be aware. Here we do have a native rose. It's got this is a leaf. So this whole thing is a leaf. And each of these little mini leaves, those are leaflets. So it has 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 leaflets 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. We're averaging about 9 leaflets. That could help you identify this rose. Also, it's kind of got these fleshy wings at the base. They're called stipules. It does not look like they have any spurs coming off of them. You can see here, the thorns are thin and scattered, especially at the nodes where a leaf attaches. You can see right there. Those are all things you can use to help you identify this rose. Again, that's going to be one. That's going to be one that I'm not going to be able to just ID on the fly. Now here's an aster. This is probably the smooth blue aster. That one I can tell you because these leaves, that blue-green, to me they stand out. Let's walk a little bit further. Let's see what else we can find. Oh, here is one of the blooms of that rose. It's spent, but it's there. It's pretty. Ah, here's a new species. These yellow flowers here. Kind of hold it still. It's opposite leaves, which means the leaves are attached to the stem and are directly opposite from each other. And you have this flower. Flip it over. You can see the bracts, the green parts to the flower. And on the back side, a lot of the asters and the sunflowers, this is what you need to do to identify them. But this is oxeye daisy. It's a Heliopsis. Alright, these aren't blooming, but these are some of my favorite plants. I love hemiparasitic plants. And we have, and hopefully you can see here, those little plants there. Let's see if I can, these guys here. That's bastard toadflax. And the reason why I like them is because they'll parasitize the roots of the plants around them to get some of their nutrients and water. And when they do that, they reduce the growth and vigor of their host plant. And in doing so, it kind of helps keep the stand, these little patches or openings where other flowers can pop up in. So they're a really important part of the system, and again, that's something that's typically overlooked in restorations and the plantings, is that hemiparasitic functional group. All the best remnants I've ever been to had a good stand of hemiparasitic plants, whether it's bastard toadflax, the wood betony, or lousewort, paintbrush, cocoons, some of the agalenus. Here, this plant here, this clump, that is false bone set. Still shots there. Keep moving. So these plants here, those broad leaves, that's the rigid goldenrod again. This fine leaf plant here, that's the thin leaf or narrow leaf mountain mint. I see a very cool milkweed. This is good. show you guys another milkweed that we have not seen on any of my other videos yet. Well, we're on our way to the milkweed. We will stop here. This plant here, some people call it Indian hemp, other people call it dogbane. This might just be common milkweed. Here's that New Jersey tea again. It's just this milkweed has very light colored flowers. Here's the dogbane with the flowers a little more pronounced. And that bird you're hearing, that's the dickcissel again. This pale purple coneflowers. Heading back up to the pathway. And then I just heard a house wren. So if you heard that real bubbly sound, that's the house wren. Here we have leaves again. It's not blooming yet. They're coming along though. It won't be long. These three-parted leaves of this plant here, that's a tick trefoil, and the petioles are really long. There are two tick trefoils that look similar. There's the Illinois tick trefoil and the showy tick trefoil. I know one of the things you look for is the length of this petiole. This is a leaf. Again, all three are a leaf. These are all part of the leaf. These are leaflets. They're in threes. And so like I said, I do know you can use the petiole length to help identify between those two species that are fairly similar. I don't recall what that is right off the bat. Like I said, I usually write this stuff down, or I'll measure it, write it down, and start going through keys and things to identify them later. Try not to waste a lot of time in the field, because the more time you can sit and key stuff out forever. I prefer to spend my time in the field just cataloging as much as I can, and then going through and doing quality control, quality assurance later, filling in the gaps based on the notes I took of plants that I couldn't identify when on the site. Here's a pretty good plant. That's the lead plant, Omorpha canescens. It's canescens because you can see it's got soft silvery hairs all over it. It's kind of fuzzy. I head back up to the trail here. Here's Black-ged Susans. Black-ged Susans are more, you're gonna find them more in the grassland prairie habitats. If you got woodlands, woodland edge, you could have brown-eyed Susans that look very similar. There's the sweet Black-ged Susans. They like sites that are a little wetter. So with the Black-ged Susans, knowing what kind of habitat you're in is gonna help immensely in figuring out which one you're looking at. The leaves are fairly different, so that helps too. We've got a really nice dense stand of sunflower. Here is an eriginium. It's a fleabane. It's probably the perennial fleabane. Keep moving. Off in the distance, I do see some of those orange daylilies out there. More Black-ged Susans and pale purple coneflowers. More of the fleabane. Yeah, here you can see the non-native orange daisy out there. It's not invasive, it's just kind of naturalized, hanging out. Here goes another of the common milkweed. Some more milkweed. Not seeing any monarchs on them yet. That birdie here is going wheeshoo, 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 wheeshoo. That's a common yellow throat. Another great grassland bird that likes prairie habitat. In the background, I don't know if you guys can hear too, it's a really low ooh, 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 ooh. And that's a mourning dove. Here's a cool plant we haven't seen yet, or that didn't catch my eye at the very least. Here we have Rattlesnake Master. And again, hopefully I'm saying this right, Erwinw would be the genus. I can spell it. Not sure if I can say it correctly. Maybe you guys can set me straight. And we do have two. We have a bindweed. It's in the morning glory family. And we do have Goldenrod here. It has really dark stems. I can't tell off the top of my head exactly which one this is. I would have to go back, pull open the keys to see, but I'm pretty sure that's not going to be Canada, because it's not hairy, and it has those red stems, so it's going to be one of the others. Yeah, so here's some of those naturalized plants. I told you the red clover can be a problem. You see that here, but you're also seeing the white Shasta daisies here. You're gonna commonly find that in these cemeteries. At one point in time, somebody planted those around a grave site. Common milkweed, pale purple coneflower, one milkweed, your black-ged Susan, more milkweed, the pale purple coneflowers. So they're coming up through this silvery leaf. That's the round-headed bush clover. That's a lespedeza. Back here, behind the sunflower patch, we have the New Jersey tea. Now there's another plant that looks like that. It's in the Ceanothus genus. The other one it could be is redroot. The leaves are different, so you'd take a really good look at the leaves. Here's a real good, this is one that's in seed mixes a lot in restorations. This one's right here. That is that gray-headed coneflower. Here's a good shot of the dogbane, or Indian hemp. A thistle. May not be one of the native ones. Oh, here's a pale spike lobelia that they have tagged. It's that spike of little whitish colored flowers there that has the orange flagging tied to it. There's the compass plant again. Black-ged Susans. this robust clump. That is the rigid goldenrod again. And you can see there's quite a bit of red clover in here. Like I said, that's not a native plant. It can be invasive and get pretty weedy. This is a nice good stand here. This clump of gray-headed coneflower that's about ready to do its thing. It's a good patch of it here. And you can see those porcupine grass, the heads, the seeds have dropped. But they're real characteristic if you take a look at them. I'll get close to one here. Here we go. She's got this real, here we go, that's probably even better. Real characteristic prominent that you can quickly identify which grass it is. There's one. This is a flowering spurge trying to come on. He'll start blooming soon. Just different times of year, different plants kick in and start blooming. So if you only go once, you miss it. You have to return to prairie. There's going to be something new blooming almost every time you come. It's constantly changing. So this is that tick trefoil I was telling you about. They had the 3 leaves, and you need to look at the petiole. If it's longer or shorter than the last leaflet is the identifying characteristic. I'm going to apologize, I don't recall. But this one, the flowers aren't as robust. If I had to guess, I would say this is Illinois tick trefoil, not the showy. The showy is going to be brighter pink and have a lot more flowers to it. They're not going to be as sparse. Don't hold me to it though, but I think I've got that right. And that's the other thing to know. If you're starting out in plants, you get out there and there are so many, don't get discouraged. And I had the honor of spending a lot of time in the field with botanists, you know, whether it was with some of my early mentors, like up at the Wapsie River Center with Bob Bryant. I spent a lot of time with the DNR botanists in Iowa, like John Pearson, Mark Luschke. I just followed those guys around and just absorbed everything they said. So don't think you can't get out there and do it. And the more you do it, and the more you start looking for different characteristics on these plants, you'll be surprised how second nature it becomes. I've also been out with Dr. Rosberg a few times from Drake. All great people. If you ever have a chance to go on any of their guided hikes or tours, I would highly recommend it. Just follow them around. So here we've got Stakes, which is a hedge nettle, one of them. And there are several different ones. There's Hesperostipa, that one has a lot of hairs to it. You look at the leaves, if they're hairy, they're not, if they're smooth. There are a couple of different characteristics you need to take a look at to figure out exactly which one you're dealing with. But I can get you to Stakes. All right, well, we got another prairie tour on the books. You guys enjoy this one until I get out there and visit another site. So have a good time, guys. This is Jennifer from Midwest Wilderness Connections.